on this one. Okay, so we're gonna get started on week number 2. This is advanced education for the essential oils. Last week we discussed kind of history, kind of the boring stuff, right? The history of essential oils. I mean, it was interesting, but you know, just kind of basic stuff. Now today we're going to kind of go into, you know, today's use of oils, and we're going to go into the science of essential oils. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Let me see if we can start at the right place. Where we left off last week is right there. So give me a second to set up my slideshow on my new computer, because I probably am doing it wrong. No, it's right. Okay, there we go. Okay, so it started over at the beginning again. Darn it. I got to figure out where all the buttons are too. Everything changes. Okay, there we go. We're going to start here. Okay, we're going to discuss the science. So is my screen being so shared? No, it isn't. There it is. Okay, so you guys can all see that, right? See the drops of oil coming off those lovely plants. It looks so lovely, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to go now into today. So we went into history and now today. So the ancient civilizations, you know, first made that case for essential oils and plant-based therapeutic practices. And they helped kind of to build to create kind of the foundation that scientists and physicians later built on now, right? And science continues to reveal valuable properties of essential oils. And our understanding has come a really long way. There's lots of, there's thousands of peer-reviewed studies. I don't know if you've ever gotten a chance to read any of them. They're wonderful. And those studies are really have helped in our understanding and are using the essential oils. And then the 21st century, which, you know, 20 years ago, 21st century really kind of brought essential oils into popular society. You're seeing them everywhere, right? And it makes so that more studies are being done. So that's what happens when something becomes popular. Of course, now we're going to study it more, right? So that's perfect, because that's what we want. We want more studies. So we have a lot of advanced technology that we can use to study the oils. And we have tons of research to base our studies on, including research from way back when, because they actually started writing down information, you know, a long time ago, over 1,000 years ago, where we can take that information and now we can learn more about the essential oils and tap into their full power. So that's what we're trying to get, right? So we talked today about extracting the oils from plants. Now I'm going to go through a section, and then I'm going to have you guys, I'm going to ask you questions and I'm going to make you answer them. Okay. So listen very carefully so you'll understand the answers, so you'll know what to say. Because we're going to have these questions also from people who talk to us, you know, people who are interested in doTERRA. We need to know how to answer these questions properly so that we don't mislead anybody, and so they understand why we've all chosen to use doTERRA essential oils. So when we take a plant and we acquire its essential oil, obviously that's called extraction, right? So we separate the essential oil from its plant, and it's not quite as easy as just like squeezing an orange peel really, really hard in your hand or crushing a leaf, right? The extraction of essential oils from the plants is really a science. So you need the right equipment, and you need really great plant material to work with in the first place. And even with the best equipment and let's say the best plant materials in the world, you have to actually, you know, we have to give it a lot of care. A lot of love and care is necessary to produce a really high quality essential oil, because we don't want to produce something that we sell in Walmart, right? So extracting the essential oils is more than just throwing that plant into a machine and then, you know, we get an oil at the end. This is a really delicate process that really begins the moment the farmer has the seeds, right? The seedlings in their hands. They have to know the best time to plant. They have to know the perfect soil conditions for those growing seedlings and the ideal moment to harvest. So I'm gonna ask you a question. How many of you have planted a garden at less than perfect time and seen poor crops? I mean, I don't know if you've done it. I've planted gardens, you know, different times of years. I've done them differently. I'm always learning, trying to get better. I used to say I had a brown thumb because nothing I planted would grow. I mean, this is really a difficult process. We have to, these have to be done.
Some cool comments.
What? I can't see the comments.
Oh, okay. She said, my heritage is German and the word drug is what we use.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Oh, good. My chat shows up differently on the screen. I like it much better.
Can you see it?
Yeah, I can now. And I can leave it on my screen now, because before I couldn't. It was too, the lettering was too big. But now it's perfect. I can read it. Okay, good. So what we have, so we've all done this, right? We planted a garden, and it's always perfect. Not every plant grows because we aren't that good at it, right? We're not professionals.
Especially me,
So,
black thumb.
yeah, right. And so we go to these professionals, and professionals are the farmers. These are the farmers that doTERRA has aligned themselves with, because these farmers have been doing these, whatever they specialize in, for generations. So they have fine-tuned it. They know exactly when to plant. They know exactly when to pick. They know exactly how to do it. They know what kind of weather it needs, what temperature controls they need, and they know how much water it needs even. I mean, I was surprised one day. I went to our local nursery and I said, hey, I have this plant and it just won't grow. And they asked me a bunch of questions. And then they said something like, well, how often do you water it? And I said, well, every other day. And they said, oh no, you need to water that plant once a week. Like, really? I always thought you need water and sunshine to grow plants. I didn't know. I didn't know that that plant, that specific plant, you're only supposed to water once a week. So I drowned the poor thing, right? So this is really important when we're trying to understand why do some companies get really good essential oils and some companies don't. Because we want, like if we take our lavender harvest to that distiller, which is doTERRA, the yield enters the next phase in its transformation. And now we're going to talk a little bit about distillation. So now the most common extraction method is distillation. We hear it all the time. We know doTERRA steam distills most of their oils, right? So let's get really sciencey, and it'll make sense eventually. So distillation is that process that involves separating a substance into its constituent parts based on its boiling points or its volatility. So when we're talking about volatility, we're talking about, the aromatic substances. Like we know that these are very volatile, which means those VOCs get into the air, they flash off, they disappear very quickly. So let's break down, what we're talking about with those volatile or aromatic compounds that we discussed last week. So those compounds are what we're trying to get out of the plant, right? We want the basic chemistry. We want all those little volatile aromatic compounds in it. So what we do is the leaf, the flower, the root, or the bark, we expose it to high temperatures, and that makes the aromatic molecules that are hidden inside of it to release, right? And because they're volatile, they quickly change to their gaseous state. Well, the tricky thing is that each constituent boils at a different temperature. So if you don't carefully control the temperature of the machine, you can lose out on some of the important chemical constituents that are in the plant. If it's too hot, you'll accidentally create a chemical reaction that ruins the natural chemistry of the essential oil. And a good distiller would know exactly how to get all the compounds out without altering them and giving that finished essential oil its potent benefits. And that's the difference between like our oil and a store oil. These store oils, they get them from who knows who, right? They're not that careful because they aren't establishing themselves as a big company or anything. Instead, they're like somebody who grows, let's say they grow sandalwood. And I've seen this actually. Somebody was selling a drum of sandalwood essential oil. And I'm asking him questions like, oh, okay, so, do you know the chemical makeup of this? And they were saying they could get mass spec report. And I said, okay, so did you do other testing so you can verify that those are actually natural and not the synthetic versions of them? And all they could say is they could assure me that it wasn't, who knows, right? Because they're just selling a big drum of oil. So that they don't have it's not necessary really for them to prove themselves because they'll sell it. Somebody's going to buy it and somebody's going to turn around and sell that in Walmart or something, put it into little bottles and sell it that way. And they don't need to know a lot because a lot of people don't care. They just go to the store and they, oh, it smells pretty, or I heard essential oils are good, and they're just going to try whatever. So we'll talk a little bit about steam distillation. So with doTERRA, I should go through some of my slides. So here is a distiller. This is one of the distillers used in steam distillation. And when we talk about extracting oils, it kind of looks like this. Okay, when you're doing your steam distillation, you've got your plant material. And then of course you heat it up, you get those vaporized essential oils, it goes up through this tube, then it has to cool here to condense the steam. Then what you get out here is essential oil and the floral water, which people refer to as hydrosol. Okay, and so the essential oils generally, not always, but generally will be on the top. And we'll discuss when it's not here. I don't want to talk about hydrosols yet. Let's go back. How do I go back? There we go. Okay, so we're talking about steam distillation. So oils can be distilled a few different ways, and the most common method, which we use, is steam distillation. And that's because it yields really pure and clean products. So exactly how does it work? It starts by, like we can see, suspending the plant matter above boiling water. Then the steam forces its way through the plant material. It breaks open the small glands that hold the essential oil. And when the essential oil is released, the oil is then carried up by the steam into a tube where then it cools and condenses, as you can see in these condensing chambers there. So kind of imagine, you know, we've all dealt with steam. You know what it's like. You boil water and you put a lid on a boiling pot, the steam cools and condenses into liquid droplets. So on the outside, you'll see the droplets come off, right? So we know what steam is, right? And it's the same with essential oils. The now liquid essential oil and that condensed steam drip down into that collection container where it separates. And now it's ready for the distiller to bottle it up. Usually the essential oil rises to the top of the separator, like we see in the picture, and the water sinks to the bottom. Although some oils like cloves, cinnamon, and wintergreen are actually heavier than water, and so they will separate to the bottom. And steam distillation is really a delicate and time-intensive process. So we're going to discuss a little bit about why this is so, all these things are so important. It involves a pressurized system, which allows the essential oils to be extracted at temperatures that are well below their normal boiling point. And this protects the integrity of the delicate, complex chemical profiles in the oils. So remember, we talked earlier about, you know, creating chemical reactions. So some of the important things that we have to remember are, here, let me see if you guys can guess. What do you think are some of the really important things while you're distilling an essential oil? What do you think are some of the things that have to be controlled very carefully? Anybody?
Temperature. Oh,
yep.
I said the same thing.
Temperature, definitely. We've heard about that already. What else do you think? Take some guesses.
The actual pressure that it's all under.
Pressure.
Plus the time.
Time. Excellent. Okay, got it. Okay, so first we have temperature, right? When steam distilling an oil, the temperature of the system has to stay within a very strict range. So the optimal temperatures usually fall between 140 Fahrenheit and 212 Fahrenheit, which is 60 Celsius and 100 Celsius. So if the temperature is too low, then the essential oil isn't extracted in full. And now that's only a problem because you'd actually miss out on some of the important chemical compounds that make an oil powerful. So it's not just if it's too low, you just don't get enough out of it. Like if we were just trying to get one thing, it wouldn't matter, right? Because if we get more or less of it, that's just, we just get less yield. So what, right? But what happens is you actually get less in that you actually miss out on certain chemicals that are in there. That's the problem. And too high of a temperature, of course, risks damaging the essential oil or even extracting some unwanted compounds from the oil. So you have to, and if I believe, isn't 212 Fahrenheit, 100 Celsius, isn't that boiling? That sounds like boiling point to me.
It is boiling point. You're correct.
Yeah, so we have to keep it below that boiling point threshold. So that's really important in the time. I thought it was. And I don't know what the lower temperature, 60 Celsius, that doesn't mean anything to me. 140 now. So it's just, if it's lower than that, I guess it just doesn't get through the material.
I think 60 has to do with bacteria. I don't think it has anything else to do with anything else.
Oh, interesting. It's interesting
Yeah.
that I'm just trying to see a correlation with the numbers. I recognize the 212 and I was like, isn't that boiling? I think 212 is boiling.
212
So
is boiling, and between 60 and 140, I think, is bacteria zone. So be careful.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So now we talk about thermal degradation and hydrolysis. So there's other ways you can do it, right? So if we're not extracting with these strict temperature guidelines, obviously a lot can go wrong. Some compounds are really heat sensitive, also known as thermolabile. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. When compounds that are heat sensitive are exposed to high temperatures, they obviously can be destroyed. And this is called thermal degradation. If the compounds aren't destroyed, then there's still a chance that they could be molecularly modified and transformed into something else. Eek! It's sounding like Frankenstein there, right? They can be molecularly modified and transformed into something else. That is a really scary thought because we don't know what we're creating then, right? There are also occurrences where the compounds are broken down because of a reaction with the heated water. So scientists refer to this as hydrolysis. And then finally, at high temperatures, there's also a risk that compounds will be completely lost because they simply turn into a vapor and flash off. They disappear, which is known as volatilization. For example, lavender is primarily made up of two compounds. We know those compounds, linyl acetate, we hear that word all the time with lavender, right? And linalool. And excess heat during distillation can convert some of the linyl acetate into linalool. Similarly, Ferano, one of the compounds in myrrh essential oil, can be transformed into coumarins if excess heat is used during steam distillation. So, while some extra linalool or coumarin may not seem like a problem, the oil no longer represents the original chemical composition of the plant, which will potentially change the essential oil's effectiveness. And, you know, my whole thought process in this is Mother Nature's smart. She knew what she was doing, and plants are made the way they're supposed to be made. And when things are put together somewhere, there's a reason they're put together. And I don't think we should be trying to take pieces of it if we're trying to get the full benefits, right? Because we don't know what some of those benefits are for. We don't know what some of those trace chemicals that are in essential oils are for. Nature put them there. We have no idea what nature's doing, right? And poor temperature control changes the chemical makeup of the oil, which can significantly influence their therapeutic value. So in other words, if the heat isn't controlled properly during this process, you'll end up with a low quality oil that's lost some of its benefits. And that's probably what we're seeing on a lot of store shelves, right? Then equally as important as temperature was something else you guys mentioned, pressure. The pressure has to be strictly controlled. So increasing the pressure of the distillation system can significantly reduce the distillation time by up to a fourth if a pressurized system is used. And if you want to introduce pressure to steam distillation, you need a closed system. That means your whole distillation system has to be pressurized to a level that's higher than the normal air around us. And enough pressure must be applied to the plant matter to soften the plant cells and allow the essential oil to escape in its vapor form. So if we have too little pressure and the precious volatile molecules aren't released, and if we have too high pressure, then the plant material is actually destroyed or the essential oil may be modified. So the required pressure varies from plant to plant, but typically falls between 15 pounds per square inch and 20 pounds per square inch. And just to give you an idea, like car tire pressure as a reference usually falls between 30 and 35 pounds per square inch, right? Everything has to have its, you know, the pressure that it needs, it has to have its appropriate pressure. Then the other thing you guys mentioned is time. So in addition to the pressure and temperature, distillation time is also important. So each plant is unique, requiring anywhere from just like a few hours to more than an entire day to fully distill. And wood oils typically have the longest distillation times, requiring even up to 36 hours or more to fully distill. Lavender, on the other hand, can be distilled in just a couple hours. So as we talk about these different important processes, I think you start to realize and we start to recognize why we've all gravitated towards doTERRA and why there's so many other things out there. It's very easy to create an oil. I even know people that create essential oils themselves in their own backyards. And there are people that do that because this isn't, look at this, what you have to have here. This isn't that hard. And if you look at the archaic ones, they even have, and they work perfectly fine. And they were just made out of common household materials and pottery and stuff like that. So these can be made, and you can buy distillers like this. You can buy these distillers on Amazon actually. And you can distill plants in your own backyard. The problem is you're not gonna have, first of all, the best plant matter because you're just getting whatever's there, right? And you're not gonna know exactly how much time that certain plant needs, what pressure it's going to need, and what temperature. These are all things that what we've studied over time, and certain companies have worked really hard to make sure that they're getting everything that plant has to offer. So let's talk a little bit about hydrosol. So what you have is after the steam distillation process is complete, what happens to all the water that was used? Because the water's still there, right? And the leftover water, we call it a hydrosol, hydrolat, or floral water. You probably heard that term, right? And people have heard of rose water, right? It sounds beautiful, but the more accurate term is actually rose hydrosol. And many companies would quite happily call any product that's a blend of essential oils and water a floral water. So you have to confirm that what you're buying is truly a hydrosol. Because hydrosols will contain bits of plant material, even small amounts of aromatic compounds. And a liter, so you know how much liter is, right? A liter of hydrosol typically contains between 0.05 milliliters and 0.2 milliliters of essential oil, which is from 1 to 4 drops. So you can see how very weak they are in comparison to what we have. Hydrosols do have therapeutic value, but aren't nearly as potent as essential oils. Their most common use is in skincare products due to their toning, hydrating, restorative, and soothing properties. So let's go back to some different types of distillation. So we're talking about hydrodistillation. So in hydrodistillation, it's often confused with steam distillation. It is not. It does differ a little bit. Sometimes it's called water distillation because hydrodistillation involves putting the plant material in boiling water rather than above it. So instead of steaming it, you're actually boiling it in the water. And that's really important because what did we just talk about? What happens if you boil your plants? Anybody remember?
Do they break down?
They can, well, they create something totally different. So you can kill, you basically kill off certain oils, their therapeutic benefits, right? And you can create other molecules that you didn't mean to. I mean, this is like kind of like Frankenstein here, right? We can create things, and we do this all the time in our world. How many things, when you boil them, change substantially? We know
That
this,
happens
right?
a lot in nutrition.
Exactly, right? You boil something and it changes. And it's unfortunate because a lot of us do, we were brought up boiling a lot of our vegetables, right? And unfortunately, we lose some of those vital properties of vegetables when we boil them. And that's why a lot of experts will say you should steam your vegetables, because you can steam your vegetables and still get that softness you desire, but it retains more of its structure when you steam it than when you boil it. You do the same thing with oils. So to keep the plant matter from settling on the bottom and burning, it's actually swirled around constantly. That's in the boiling of it, right? The hydrodistillation. And the rest of the process is similar to steam distillation, with the steam carrying the essential oil out of the plant matter up into the condenser. And hydrodistillation is used to extract essential oils like frankincense and myrrh, because these oils are derived from resin. Since steam distillation doesn't effectively penetrate the hard resin chunks from the frankincense or myrrh tree, they require something a little bit more intensive than steam just to distill the essential oils. So there are times when we have to use that, right? And now we talk about the difference between them. So we talk about steam distillation versus hydrodistillation. So knowing the best method to extract the key volatile molecules is important to produce the highest quality essential oils. So for an example, even though steam distillation and hydrodistillation are similar, they can produce quite different oils from the same material. So plant material can be distilled in two distinct ways, and the end product will have different ratios of aromatic compounds. So for instance, a study comparing steam distilled and hydrodistilled thyme essential oil found that this steam distilled distillation extracted greater amounts of thymol and carvacrol. Those are the two important molecules of therapeutic value that we look at when we're looking at thyme, right? So we want to look at, which one does better. So on this particular one, steam distillation extracted greater amounts of those two that we're looking for. And we've studied those separately, and we'll study them again later in this course, talking about carvacrol and thymol and what they're for. And that's what we're looking for. Generally, if you get thyme oil, you want high amounts of those two specifically. And so we don't want to lose those in our distilling process. And then I'm going to talk about there's another kind of, this is interesting. Doesn't this look interesting? It's cute. I just got this picture offline from one of the fractional distillation people. So before we leave the topic of distillation, I want to talk a little bit about multiple or fractional distillations. So during fractional distillation, fractions of the essential oil are actually removed throughout the process. So can you maybe think, what would be the benefit of that? Anybody have any ideas?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Okay, so what's the benefit of getting just a fraction of the essential oil? So generally when you're doing this, you're getting a specific, it's not just you're getting like 25% of the whole. What you're getting is a specific set of essential oils, of chemicals. So each essential oil has, let's say, 50 chemicals or so, right? Each of them do. And let's say you wanted to get certain chemicals.
So what if something has a value at distillation and something else at a certain time, and something else has a value at a longer time? You can get two benefits from one harvest.
I don't know that that's really correct. It's more, the only time this is actually used, okay, because what we believe is that we want to get each and every chemical constituent part. We want our, what is this, rosemary? We want our rosemary to have all the different essential oils that the rosemary plant offers us, because we believe nature did it right. So we could take the rosemary and say, hey, in rosemary, there's this chemical and this chemical. And now we can say, hey, I just want this chemical part, or I just want that chemical part. We don't do that in the essential oil industry, at least doTERRA doesn't, because we believe in nature, okay? What we do when this would be useful is if you are making perfume. You want a certain smell. So this is where fractional distillation is used a lot, because we want to get just a certain part of the oil that has that smell. So it's going to lose its, what we call its effectiveness from the essential oil benefit of it. but it's going to have a really unique smell, because rosemary always smells a certain way, right? You take out some of those chemicals in there, it's going to smell different. And that's why different oils from different companies smell different. Have anybody ever tried smelling an oil from a different oil company?
It usually smells like alcohol to me.
That might be one of them.
Yeah, I've smelled Thieves from Young Living and On Guard from doTERRA. And
Do they smell different to you?
they smell so different. I love On Guard and I hate Thieves. Like
Wow,
my
okay, that's
body
surprising.
my body totally rejects it. Like I don't even want to smell it.
I wonder why. I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I don't know why, because
I don't
Thieves
either.
is an adequate product, but yeah, so but it just shows you, depending where your oil comes from, it can smell completely different. So if you get lavender from one country or one part of a country, and you get it from even a different farm where they do things a little bit differently, or they plant them at a slightly different altitude, right? Or they water them a little bit less or a little bit more. I mean, all of you guys have probably seen movies where they grow grapes. Do you see how intense grape growing is for wine production? They have to do everything just so, right? The grapes have to be just the right, and when they pick them, they have to be just right. And they go through, they hand pick these grapes, and they can only take the ones, because they don't all ripen exactly the same time, right? They can only take the grapes that are a certain firmness and color. Is pretty interesting. It's really intense for them to get the taste that they want in the wine they're trying to create. And this is the same type of thing. It's like connoisseurs of essential oils, right? So usually we see fractional distillation anyway in the perfume industry. That's really the only reason you would want to be separating out different parts of the essential oil. So we talk about ylang-ylang because it's an essential oil that's sometimes fractionally distilled. And the reason they do it, I think, is to save money. And it undergoes a lengthy distillation of about 24 hours, where fractions of the essential oil are removed at specific times throughout that process. And during the first hour, a fraction of ylang-ylang essential oil is removed from the batch. And that fraction is called ylang-ylang extra or ylang-ylang super. So ylang-ylang extra is mostly used for high-class perfumes because of the smell. It has a really coveted aroma. I'd be curious to smell this, because I've actually never smelled a ylang-ylang super or extra in the perfume industry. I'd be very interested to smell what it smells like, before you take all of the essential oils out and put it in a bottle. So as that distillation process continues, another fraction is removed between the second and third hour. And that fraction is called ylang-ylang 1, and it's also frequently used for perfumes. And as you might have guessed, the next fraction removed between the third and fifth hour is called ylang-ylang 2. Fractions 1 and 2 are often used in cosmetics, soaps, and detergents. And the fraction of oil removed between hours 8 and 24 is called ylang-ylang 3. So ylang-ylang oil that comes from an uninterrupted distillation, the entire day-long process, is called ylang-ylang complete. So that would be, all of the oils that are extracted from ylang-ylang are all together. We feel that it's more well-rounded, a well-rounded chemical profile. It's got a really high sesquiterpene content that we really like. And remember the word sesquiterpene, because you're going to learn more about this later. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about some of the other types of extraction we do. So this is part of the process. Does anybody know what process this might be from this picture? Can you guess what distillation process this is right here? Or extraction process, I should say. Any ideas?
I have no idea, but it looks like maybe it's going to grind or get some pulp out or something.
There you go. Yes, this is expression or cold pressing. So there's a lot of ways to extract essential oils, and this one is called expression. It's mostly used for citrus oils. It's really straightforward. I mean, you take, for example, an orange, you put it through a machine that squeezes out the essential oil from the peel. It's interesting because it goes through this machine. It kind of keeps scraping out the outside. It's like getting a lot of zest. If you remember when we used to use lemon zest in cook days, but you're getting all that peel off. And unlike the steam distillation, the expression doesn't need any heat. That's why you'll often hear, it referred to as cold pressing. That's how we refer to it, right? So let's imagine that life hands you lemons. You want to make lemonade. No, actually, you're going to make lemon essential oil. So for the essential oil, we're using the peel. So they put the lemons into that expression machinery I told you about. It kind of rolls across these cylinders that keep piercing the peel and break those little sacs where the essential oil is contained in the peels. And you can see this. Has anybody ever take just the peel of a fruit, like a lemon does it really good. You take just the peel. So you take all the inside out, make sure there's nothing there, and then you squeeze it. You can see as the oils spray off of there. Those are the essential oils as they burst. So then they spray the fruit with water, which washes the essential oil out into a container. And what you get is essential oil mixed with particles, obviously from the rind. And then to separate the essential oil, you filter, this is a physical, mechanical process. You filter and then you centrifuge the oily mixture. And then you have lemon essential oil. So expression produces really potent essential oils that smell nearly identical to the fruit, because that's what we're smelling when we pick our fruit. We're smelling the outside of that fruit. So it's no wonder that we love citrus oils. Honestly, they smell great. We love them. So another way we can do that, so we usually use expression, right? So cold pressing expression is the most common method for extracting those citrus essential oils, but you can steam distill citrus fruit too. Now you're going to get a slightly different oil when you do. And because expression is a physical process, it can extract those heavier compounds along with the aromatic molecules. And when you compare the expressed orange oil with a distilled orange oil, the expressed oil is going to be a light orange in hue because it contains some orange pigment. So have you guys all noticed that? I don't know if you use wild orange as much as I do. Wild orange is my favorite, so it's always right here. And you notice it has a little bit of an orange tint to it, right? Has anybody seen that?
Yeah,
With my hand, I can see.
What's the difference between wild orange and tangerine? Because I mix between the two when I bake.
And that's fine. They are slightly different in their smells, and they're slightly different in their chemical makeup. And we use them for different things because of that, because some of the constituent parts of wild orange we know is really good for focus, but we do have other benefits that we get when we use tangerine oil. So if you're using them for baking, you can use whatever you want, or mixing it is great. We love mixing our oils and getting some really unique flavors, right? You can mix in wild orange, you could throw in some lemon. I use wild orange on my pillow at night. I could probably use tangerine on my pillow at night and feel about the same. They both smell delicious to me. I love, 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 love the smell of wild orange.
What about how many drops would you do for a loaf of bread if you're doing in a bread maker?
Be very careful. These are so strong. we've done some of this and we've been like, oh my gosh, we used way too much. So
they are very strong. I would do 4 to 6, just like you do when you do the diffuser. I wouldn't do more than that.
Yeah, and peppermint is even, you have to use less. So if any of you made like peppermint brownies, we make them, and a whole brownie recipe, if we use even 2 drops of peppermint oil, it is plenty. So you're going to want to play with that because some of them can get really strong. I made the mistake of making apple celery nut salad, and I found this great recipe for using On Guard essential oil to make on the apples, right? And it didn't really say how many drops to use, so I put in 5 drops. And I made a salad for Thanksgiving for everybody. And everybody took a bite and looked at me and like, oh my gosh, what did you do to this? Because it was way too strong. I probably should have just put 1 drop. Same thing if you're using something like cilantro essential oil, super strong, like in salsa, 1 drop, guys. Lime oil, I put a few drops in.
I was thinking rosemary or oregano for bread.
Oh, those would be good too. Yeah. And if you're making it, those things, let us know how it came out. We're always playing with the oils. I don't make bread often. I should. I don't want to use a bread maker because I use an aluminum pan. I want to make bread the way my mom used to make it. She used to actually make it by hand and put it in the glass cooking dishes. I want to make it like that because she made bread all the time when I was growing up. And I would love to do that.
When I use the glass, I only do 1 drop of the oregano or rosemary. Totally.
Those are really strong.
Really strong. 1 drop. For 1 pound.
That makes sense?
Mm.
Okay. Thanks for your tips. It's great to have these tips because we want to learn how to use the oils, and nobody wants to go through the same mistakes. If somebody's figured it out and already done it, we don't want to make the mistake of putting like 5 drops of rosemary in a loaf of bread and then get this bread that is like really, really strong with rosemary, and that's all you can taste, right? So now if we compare expressed orange oil, like distilled orange oil, we already said it have that light pigment, right? And even though it has that pigment, I'll tell you, every night before bed, I put the wild orange essential oil on my pillow, and there is no staining whatsoever. I take drops and I just drop right down my pillow. I love it so much at night. I love to go to sleep with that smell, and it has not left any residue on my beautiful organic cotton pillow. So that's great. Because I was worried about that it might leave stains on my stuff, but I really enjoy it. So it doesn't matter, even though it's this orangish color, it doesn't leave color behind for some reason. Now, in general, steam distilled citrus oils will smell slightly sweeter than the tart cold pressed citrus oils, okay? And expressed essential oils can also have some minor chemical differences from their distilled versions. So remember, we do expressed at doTERRA, right? For example, distilled bergamot essential oil usually contains less linalool acetate, which we can get in lavender, so who cares, right? And more linalool than the expressed bergamot, okay? And that's because some of the linalool acetate in the steam distilled bergamot oil is exposed to heat and converted to linalool, which we discussed earlier, that's what happens. And that's why sometimes when people do lavender at too high a heat, they'll take the lavender and it converts too much to linalool. We end up with too much linalool. And we like the linalool acetate because the linalool acetate is what we associate with those calming properties of lavender oil. And we don't want to lose those because we've extracted it wrong or we've put it too high a temperature, because then we lose that. Now we talk about a little bit about photosensitivity when we're talking about essential oils. So I think this is very important to know, what oils will make you sensitive to the sun. And that's why I like to use my wild orange at night before bed, because that gives me 12 hours before I'm out in the sun. So a difference between cold pressed and steam distilled citrus oils is the presence of the Ferano Coumarins. So those are in expressed essential oils like we have, like in lemon and bergamot. And these Ferano Coumarins are a type of chemical constituent that reacts with ultraviolet rays that are coming from the sun. So they're found in trace amounts in some of the expressed citrus oils. And distilled citrus oils generally don't contain them because they're some of the heavier molecules that we mentioned before that don't come through in distillation. So we want them for their benefits. That's why we like them in there. But we have to be careful that when we're using those cold pressed oils topically, especially like bergamot, and then we're exposing our skin to UV light, that we have to be careful because it can cause a super sensitivity. And when these chemicals are present on the skin exposed, then that chemical reaction takes place, causes the skin to be photosensitive. So it's going to be super extra sensitive to that light from the sun. And that, you can get sunburn, you can get discoloration, and even blistering. So be really careful with those. So we love to be smelling the sweet citrus in the summer sun, but don't put on your bodies when you're going out in the sun to your skin. So we don't have a problem consuming them. You can still consume them and go out in the sun, but do not get them on your skin unless you're going to be out of sunlight for a little while. So we tend to use those more in the evening, right? And one of my favorite things, and we'll finish up with this, is that the essential oils, when we steam distill and like this, it is a zero waste process. The expressed citrus oils is, citrus oil is frequently a byproduct of the juice or food industry. So we're using the whole plant, because typically what happened before essential oils was, they get all the pulp out to make their orange juice, lemon juice, whatever, right? Where do you think the peels went? In the trash, So the citrus oil is frequently a byproduct of that industry, and millions of pounds of fruit are grown to create fruit juices. Only the flesh of the fruit is needed for the juice. And many of those companies will cold press the leftover rinds to make those citrus essential oils like we do. And after the process is complete, the excess rinds and pulp usually become fertilizer or help feed cattle. So every bit of citrus fruit is used. In the end, you get at least 3 useful products: the juice or the fruit itself, the essential oil that comes from the rinds, and the leftovers for fertilizer or feed. So no waste is a way of thanking Mother Earth for her gifts. So I think I have a little bit more time, so I'm going to talk a little bit about other extraction methods. Should we go into that now? No, you know what? I'm going to save that for next week. I'm going to save the other extraction methods for next week. We're going to talk about what other companies do, extracting with solvents and other things that they do. And right now, what I'd like to do is I'd rather go through what we've already learned, and let's talk about what we would tell customers. So now you know a little bit more, kind of solidified it in our head, right? So somebody comes to you and they say to you, gosh, these doTERRA essential oils are a little bit more expensive than the ones I buy at the store. Why? Why should I buy these oils from doTERRA when I can get, the same named oil? I can get wild orange at the store, right? Actually, it's not that much more at doTERRA for wild orange, but let's say it's something like rosemary. Our rosemary was what? A little under $20 or something like that, right? But you could get this at Walmart for $7 or $8. So why? Why are we buying the rosemary from doTERRA? Any thoughts?
Pure.
Purity.
Potent.
Yep. Now they ask you, okay, why? What makes them more pure and potent? They all came from rosemary, right? Took a rosemary plant, somebody distilled it, they created rosemary essential oil. Why is doTERRA's better? Any thoughts?
We know where it's sourced. We know how it's processed.
Huh?
The process you showed us, something about the distillation details.
So let's try to make this a little more streamlined so you could sound like you know what you're talking about when you answer your customer, right?
I
Okay.
need help.
Yeah. So
All right,
that's what I want to do. I want to get you guys thinking and feeling comfortable answering that
think
question.
about the process of distillation 1, 2, and 3, like what Ginny went over. 1, 2, and 3 could mean, different potency.
So what we kind of saying is, okay, let's say you get an oil from Walmart. Do we know, first of all, do you even know where it came from? Because usually you don't. And even if you knew the company that produces that, now what do you know about that company's process? Are they making sure that they're not having the temperature too high and therefore destroying some key elements of this oil, maybe the key elements you want, because you read that rosemary is really good for memory, right? And you want that, right? That's what we read about it, we learn about it. We want all those different parts that Mother Nature gave us. And we don't know when we have an oil that's at a store and it's cheap, we can kind of guess it's cheap because either they didn't fully extract the entire chemical makeup of the plant, all the different essential oils that are available, all the different, chemical constituent parts that are available in that oil because they wanted to save money. How do you save money? So there's lots of ways to save money. One, you can not have a rigorous temperature control, because if you just want to put fire under it and you just steam it that way and you don't manage the temperature, somebody there managing it, making sure it doesn't go too high or too low, because remember, these are steam distilled. So you have to that has to be monitored. And if you don't want to pay somebody to do that, then you simply light a fire and stick the stuff on top, and you can just distill it through a distiller that way, which you can get online, right? And then you can create this oil. Now the problem is going to be, if it got too hot, then it may have destroyed some of the material in it. If it wasn't hot enough, it didn't extract all the different chemical constituent parts, right? If it wasn't fully distilled, because not everybody knows that certain oils take longer to distill everything out of it. That takes a lot of research. And a lot of people who are just selling a product, they don't care. I mean, I don't think Walmart cares. Do they really care if they're selling you an oil that went through the whole 24-hour process? Or if they said, hey, let's just extract for 2 hours, we'll get most of the chemicals out in 2 hours. And if we don't get, these other 10 chemicals, who cares? Because they don't understand essential oils. They don't know that those 10 chemicals are what balances out the other things, right? They don't know that when you want an essential oil to have an effect and it's being studied, when it's being studied in its fullness with everything there. Right? It's a big difference to be missing some parts. Can you imagine? I mean, if we come into the world and we're missing an arm, yeah, it kind of sucks, doesn't it? We don't want to be missing parts of our oils because it's not going to work the same. It's the same thing. So that when we explain to somebody and we're saying, why doTERRA? That's why. We want the purity. We want the potency. We want to know that this was grown in the proper growing conditions. We want to know that it was picked at the proper time, that it was extracted fully using the proper steam distillation methods, and that nobody took any shortcuts. And that we can be assured of that with doTERRA, because this is everything they do. They're not going to take shortcuts. They have a premium product for a reason. They want people to get the benefits of the essential oils, all the benefits, not just smell good. If we want something that smells good, then yeah, heck, if you want something that smells good, don't even get essential oils, get hydrosols. They're a lot cheaper because you just want the smell, right? So don't waste your money on these therapeutic grade essential oils if that's what you want. So when people are looking for something, that's what they're going to ask you. Now you have an answer for them. This is why doTERRA is more expensive. It takes a lot longer because they go through the entire process and everything is rigorously controlled. In fact, if you've been to doTERRA, you've seen them as they bottle these, because they get them in these big drums. I've seen theirs. So I've been there and they have these giant drums. That's how they get them from their farms, right? From the different farmers that work all over the world. And they bring them in these drums. And then they have this machine where they have all the little bottles, right? So they have the bottles and then they pour the drum into this machine. It comes out and squirts into the bottles just the right amount. and then another machine comes and puts the lids on and everything. And the people who are working, that are monitoring all this in the room, because you have to have somebody there in case the machine breaks or whatever, right? They are all in surgical garb. They have their glove, they got masks on, and this was before COVID. I mean, they've always had this. This is what they do, because they want to keep it as pure as possible with no contamination whatsoever. So it's a very intense process. It's not the same as, you know, oils that you're going to get from somebody extracting them either in their own backyard, or even some of these farms who are just trying to make money. And so they do whatever they can, because it's all about making some money for them, right? And nobody's overseeing it, so they don't care. They just say, hey, I got a drum of this, I want to sell it. So yeah, and if you, if you go, I mean, if you ever get a chance to go to doTERRA, it's just absolutely amazing. Their lab is absolutely wonderful, and seeing as they, put all these oils together, and I've watched as they do all of this, it's really interesting. It's really fun. And I'm a little geeky myself, and I do enjoy the science a lot. So that answers that question. So tell me some of the other questions that people ask you a lot when they're asking about essential oils, because that's what we want to be able to answer. We want to be experts that are going to help people understand why we chose these oils and why we think that this is what they should be using. So tell me some of the questions that you get from customers that we think we learned the answer to today. Does anybody have any that you can think of? Oh, I can think of one. Okay, so this is a question I've gotten. Is there any hexane or petroleum byproducts in these oils? That's a big problem for some people who are chemically sensitive, like myself. And that would be a question that I would ask. And I've asked that question before of companies. And so how do we know that those aren't there? And it's because of the way these are processed. Again, we are not extracting with solvents. When you get hexane and you get petroleum byproducts, that is because you are using a solvent in the processing of the oil. And what happens is the finished product, no matter what anybody tells you, the finished product will still have some of that in there. Usually it's only about 1 to 5%, but for some people that's too much, because it is a chemical and those cannot ever be ingested. So you'll never see an ingestible oil that was extracted using that process. So that's probably why a lot of the oils we see in stores say that you can't ingest them. Yeah, processing without solvents are definitely more pure, because the solvents were never there to begin with. So we don't have to worry about removing them or trying to remove them. They're really hard to remove. We're not using solvents. And that's what we're going to discuss next week, is more about the solvents. And then let's see some of the other questions you might get. So we get questions a lot about the purity of our citrus oils. So citrus oils, when we use this process of cold pressing, then we take it all the way down to the very, very end of the processing, and we get all they filter out all the other contaminants. All you are left with is a pure essential oil. But not all companies are the same. If you want to save money, what do? Okay, so if you're a company and you want to save money, then you don't worry about that final process, because the final process is time intensive. It takes time to filter out all this other stuff. So what do? Let's just leave it in there. It's so small, nobody's going to notice, right? And it'll be in the bottles, and you're not going to see it. It's going to look like a liquid pretty much until you look at it under a microscope, and you're like, wait a minute, that's not an essential oil, right? So that's what a lot of companies will do when they're trying to save money extracting their oils. And the partial extraction is one of the other methods that I think a lot of companies use. That's probably the most common one, especially with some of your more expensive oils, because they take so long in the distillation process. They just stop it when it reaches the amount that they want, and they aren't concerned on the fact that a lot of those essential oil compounds don't come out until the very end of the extraction process. So like zero of it. So like, let's go with this story. We know linalool, vinyl acetate, limonene, and I'm just going to throw out names that we understand, that we know about. So let's say those 3 are in my oil. And let's say at the beginning of the processing, all the limonene comes out. I get lots of limonene, and there's lots of limonene in this oil. And then I extract it a little bit more, and I get a lot of linalool acetate. And then let's say I decide to stop it there, and maybe I didn't get any of the linalool that is also supposed to be there. So now I don't have the full chemical makeup. Now I've got something completely different. It's going to act completely different. And so it may not have the benefits that we enjoy from the oil. So if you buy an oil at Walmart and you're trying to solve a problem that we've read about, and we say, oh, well, this oil is really good for solving this problem. We get it home and we're like, wow, it doesn't work. And then we get people that don't believe in essential oils because all they've tried is a very weak essential oil that was really good only for making things smell good. Okay, does that make sense, everybody?
Yep.
Okay, so do you feel like you learned a lot here?
Yes.
Does that help you guys a little bit with the understanding of some of the extraction methods that we use specifically with doTERRA?
Yeah, I like seeing some of those images.
Good, good. Yeah. And if you see, like when we go to convention, and I have some pictures I should probably try to get a hold of too, because I've taken pictures at convention of their distillation equipment because they bring little samples of stuff when we go to convention, and we all get pictures of those things. So I do have some pictures I should try to share with you so you can see, you know, firsthand. And we'll see a lot this year. So how many of you guys are going to the, let's call it, I guess, the virtual convention that doTERRA is having this year? Is anybody going? I'm going.
Faith
Anybody
said
else?
yes in the comments, and I'm signed up for it.
Oh, good.
So
Okay.
everything's going well.
Yeah. So I don't, how much is it just to sign up? If you don't get the swag kit, it's only what, 20 something, right?
25.
$25. Yeah. So it's not expensive. It's going to be, you know, several days of really intense education from doTERRA about essential oils, about doTERRA. They'll introduce brand new oils and products they come out with every year. So they'll be coming out with new products, hopefully. I don't know how much COVID is affecting all that. So you know that we're not going to convention this year because of COVID. So we're not having the live convention that we usually enjoy every year, but we are going to enjoy that virtual convention. So hopefully you guys, you know, will get a chance to come. If you don't, then hopefully all of us will be posting a lot of information about it, and I'll be doing some live online talking about it to help you understand what we learned at convention. Every convention we learn new things, and there's new products. And so I always make sure to share that with everybody who's following me so that you're kind of in the loop. Okay, so if you have any questions for me privately, let me know, obviously. Any other questions before I go? Who's here? So a bunch of my builders are here, and then Fanny's here also. So I haven't met you before, Fanny.
It was great, Jeannie. Thank you.
You are so
Interesting.
welcome. So hopefully we've answered some questions. So next week, like I said, we'll continue on with this whole process. We're going to do a little bit more in understanding the different extraction methods. And then hopefully that will answer some more of your questions. And if you have any questions in the meantime, please reach out to me. I feel weird because my camera's in a weird position. Huh. Anyway, I feel weird like I'm at the bottom of the screen hiding. Yeah, peekaboo. Okay, so anyway, next week we'll go forward with this, keep going with the advanced training as much as we can. And if you have any questions along the way, or you feel like something's been skipped or you missed something, please email me, let me know so I can kind of backtrack over those things, because this is for you guys. This is to kind of help solidify things you probably learned in the past. This stuff is available in various places, but sometimes we like to just pull it all together and make it a little bit simpler and make it really kind of so it appeals to the people who are just trying to answer questions and help their customers, or help, you know, other people and themselves with using the oils, and having a better understanding of exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it. Okay.
All right.
Any other
Thank
questions that we see? Okay, awesome. Okay, then I'll see you next week. Tomorrow I have intro to oils. So if you want to invite anybody who's new to oils, or you know, doesn't understand them yet and just wants to learn more, they do not have to be members to go to that class at all. They just, we invite everybody openly to all of our classes because we want them to learn wherever they're at. And so we don't want to deprive them of any knowledge. So, and then this Thursday is the last week of continuing education. And then I'll redo the series. That entire series is already up on my YouTube channel. So you can actually watch it from beginning to end and get your certificate if you watch all of the 8 classes that I did. This is also being posted online. I already posted last week on my YouTube channel. So that if you want to learn more about the history of essential oils, and then I'll post this video so you can you backtrack through it if you wanted to look a little bit more and see if there's anything you didn't understand. And if you didn't understand it because I didn't explain it well, then let me know. Let me know a better way to explain it, or if you have questions about it, please let me know so I can answer those, okay?
Okay.
Okay, bye guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.